back to Brian for Liberty. I have switched cameras, so I hope this is actually a little bit better quality video-wise for you all out there. Today we're going over Critical Race Theory Chapter 4, and I believe that this is one of the worst chapters in the book. It delves into what is essentially my least favorite aspect of critical race theory, which is the whole idea of intersectionalism. Intersectionalism, for those of you who aren't familiar, is essentially the idea that you're not just being oppressed for one reason, you're actually being oppressed across a whole range of reasons. So, and it's impossible for our justice system to properly address all the different ways in which you are being oppressed. So I think this presents a lot of issues, but at its core, it'll eventually revert to individualism. That's what you're going to end up getting when you talk about intersectionalism. Because what happens here is that there is no accounting for the broad range of things that you may find that create a disadvantage for you. And again, goes back to yesterday's video a little bit. Every single thing that happens to you that's bad is not a direct reflection on you as a person at all. What it is a form of oppression against some random quality about yourself that you can define. So you can say, this bad thing happened to me because I'm black. This bad thing happened to me because I'm a woman. This bad thing happened to me because I'm black and a woman. This bad thing happened to me because I'm gay. This thing happened to me because I'm a gay black person. This thing happened to me because I'm a gay Hispanic. So all these different things that could be forms of oppression are so broad and so undefined that it's impossible to nail that down. And that's what happens, is eventually you end up reverting back to the idea that the only way to protect against this kind of stuff is to make sure that we're protecting people's individual liberties and keeping them and making sure that everybody has to play by the same rules. The other issue that I have with this is it focuses on only oppression. Oppression is the only thing we talk about. Nobody in this country is oppressed. We are confusing societal biases, which can be bad. Don't get me wrong. Internalized biases can be bad, but there's a big difference between internalized biases and how they play themselves out in society versus actual oppression. We have to be able to distinguish between the issues associated with internalized biases and actual oppression. And the problem with the problem with the United States is, and I say this tongue in cheek, the problem here is nobody's really experienced actual oppression. So we take every disadvantage that may be presented to us, every issue that creeps up in front of us, as if it is a form of oppression. I'm not getting my way, I'm being oppressed. I got bad news for you. If you were born with male genitalia, having to use the male bathroom is not a form of oppression. Okay? It may be a form of societal bias, but it's not a form of oppression. That's the kind of stuff we have to start being able to distinguish between. Okay? Biases are not necessarily a bad thing. I grew up in a bad neighborhood. Now, I didn't grow up in what would be, I think, what you would call a ghetto or an incredibly violent area. But it was a rough neighborhood. You probably didn't want to be out late after dark in where I grew up. It was a low-income neighborhood, very multicultural. We had a very diverse population. Oh, by the way, bad neighborhoods aren't just black and good neighborhoods aren't just white. I don't know who needed to hear that, but I just wanted to share that with you real quick. But the bottom line is I have a bias against certain types of neighborhoods. I have a bias against engaging in or being out late in bad neighborhoods. My wife and I both do. When we shop for a house, we have a bias against certain levels of, this house looks run down or there's a lot of old cars on the road. You know, when you're looking for a home, there's biases, internalized biases. They keep you safe. They keep you from making bad decisions. They don't always do. They can also be bad. They can also make you make a decision based on race that you may not have otherwise made. And it may not be a form of racism. Some of it's just an internalized bias may be the desire to associate with people who are like you. Freedom of association is a thing. So we can't take every form of internalized bias, even if the outcome is bad, and attribute it to actual oppression. And I think that in our society today, we've done a very good job of making people aware of their internalized biases. And if there's something positive to come from critical race theory, that might be it. That's a thing that I'm slamming this book and I have a lot of problems with it, but that doesn't mean just because I disagree with it that something good couldn't have come out of it. And one of the good things that I think is coming out of the modern discussion of race and how that works in the United States is the fact that, yeah, we can all be a little bit more aware of our racial biases. We can all be a little bit better at identifying whether or not there's an actual issue or if this is just something that's implanted in my head as a bias, and to pay attention to that. But the actions and the results of an internalized bias or societal biases aren't necessarily, well, they're not at all oppression. And there's a lot of societal biases that are very good. You may not agree, that's fine, but the bottom line is there are societal norms that you can apply to virtually any race. I talked about this a little bit in my video. I talked about this a little bit yesterday in yesterday's video. I talked about this a little bit in yesterday's video, where if you took race out of the equation and you looked at just economic outcomes, there's a certain set of behaviors that are associated with people who are successful, and there's a certain set of behaviors that are associated with people who are not successful. You don't have to like it, but our society isn't built to oppress a particular race or elevate a particular race. It's not built to oppress a particular race or elevate a particular race. What it is designed to do is to reward certain types of behavior. And if we can get that to the forefront and what those behaviors are, that's far more important than trying to eliminate every ounce of internalized bias, because that's never going to happen. And you're sure as hell never going to get rid of all forms of racism. But our society, by and large, even when you look at it through the lens of race, our society benefits very specific types of behavior. It benefits graduating from high school. It benefits you for having a strong work ethic. It benefits you if you wait until later in life to have children. It benefits you if you are not sexually active early. These are all facts. It's undeniable. One of the primary drivers, the Brookings Institute actually did a study on this that said if you graduate from high school, get a job, and don't get married or have children, I think till 25, you have a 70+% chance of entering the middle class, just no matter what your race is. And there's one more thing that actually takes it up to 90-some%, and that's all regardless of your race, all regardless of your gender. Our society rewards specific behaviors. When we talked about shame yesterday in yesterday's video, and how shaming, the idea that all behavior is good and it should all be applauded, well, that's fine. You live in a free country and you're certainly welcome to behave and live your life however you see fit. But our society does reward specific behaviors. And if you don't like that, that's fine. Work to change it, I guess. But at the end of the day, if you want to live outside of what our societal norms are and you want to behave in specific ways that our society has deemed are not beneficial and therefore your rewards are going to be lower, there's nothing that can be done about that for you. The other thing that really bothers me is that you start getting into the subtle racism of the anti-racist left. And what I mean by that is all forms of oppression are built around minorities. White people is always privilege. Black people is always oppression. And building that lens is abusive in my mind. There are several factors that are going to determine whether or not you're a successful person or not. And chief amongst them is your mindset. And drilling this message into the minds of young people ad nauseum, nonstop from an early age, you are guaranteeing that the mindset is one that is negative, one that is very doubtful of its future, and one that is not necessarily excited about working hard and following societal norms, because they're being told that despite whatever they do, they are going to be and they're going to experience some form of oppression, which is absolutely untrue, but that's the message. And that's a terrible message. I don't care about white guilt. Okay? I'm biracial. I don't care about white guilt. Even if I don't care if white people feel bad that this is being taught. And I don't think most white people, I don't think that's their issue. But The issue here is that you are teaching young minorities. This is my issue with it. You are teaching young minorities that they're always going to fill the role of the oppressed, and that is wrong. That is, I mean, in all honesty, that's mental, that's a form of abuse, in my opinion. I can't believe we think it's okay to teach young minorities this and then say, go out in the world and have success. I'm going to make you bitter and angry, and I'm going to make you feel hopeless. And then I'm going to try and figure out, geez, I wonder why these kids aren't working so hard in school. I wonder why they're not thinking about their future. So, critical race theory, this is my least favorite chapter. It's very short. It's kind of like tagged on. We're getting close to the end of this book, actually. It's kind of tagged on at the end. It's a very short chapter. You can tell I'm kind of passionate about it. And I just wanted to hit this one quick and get it out there that there's a difference between depression and people taking action based on internalized biases. Critical race theory, and one of its benefits is probably the fact that it's making us recognize some of these internalized biases, and that we can't base all oppression around people of color and all privilege around white people, because that is literally racist. So wanted to get that out. So as always, I want to thank you guys for stopping by. I'm going to keep putting these videos out. It's for those of you who are stopping by here and engaging in my content, I really appreciate it. Again, like, subscribe, leave a comment. That does a lot for me. It really helps with the algorithm and is going to help start pushing my videos out there a little bit more. Thanks, and we'll see you guys next time.